it started now. Freedom, 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 freedom. My freedom begins at Life Force Canada.
Welcome to Life Force Canada. I am Karen Klassen. Thank you for being here and thank you for standing for freedom. I just watched a movie on the weekend with my mom, and it's called Ordinary Magic with Ryan Reynolds. It's an old movie. He's just a young boy, but I highly recommend it because it shows the power of a town saving a home from being torn down by a large corporation. I know it's on Amazon Prime, but you might find it elsewhere. Great movie. I shed some tears. It just really showcases the power that people have when they unify and have the power in community. It was very, very inspiring. So here, Health Canada has granted a BC cannabis company the right to possess, produce, sell, and distribute cocaine. Oh, what a world we're creating here, right? Yeah, so spending your taxpayer money to distribute drugs. They want more people to become addicted. No, they're not focusing on treatment or any effort to stop the overdose death. I think the rate in BC in 2022 was about 6 people per day. This country will only change when the people wake up and say no to this demonic system that is being perpetuated upon us. Please, yes, say hello in the chat. Let us know what town or city or province you're from. Yes, I'm so glad you enjoyed that movie yesterday. I didn't even know it was there. I love Ryan Reynolds. Well, I used to love Ryan Reynolds and Hollywood celebrities, but not too much anymore. But my mom loves watching movies, so yeah, highly recommend it. Okay, the control matrix, it's breaking apart, and we will continue to see the bizarre and the miraculous happening right before our eyes. We're going to be seeing the truth about everything. So just remember, the only way is through, and the only way they can get to you is through fear. So this is about us letting go of the things that you cannot control and really focus on only what you can control, which is our own mind, our actions. And we know that the external reality, it's breaking down. We just look at the protest in Paris. The people have had enough and the police had to back off as there were too many who were saying, no, I will not comply. So it's happening all across this realm. It's exciting to see that people are waking up. And yes, it's scary. And for me, though, I know that we're stepping into creating a new earth that is filled with love. We are moving from fear to love, and we all need our heart open, right, to truly awaken to our power. A lot of people stay in the mind, but it is the heart that is the key to ascending through this into a new timeline and a new life script for all of us. Speaking of new timelines, I have something really wild that I have to share with you. You've probably heard of people say a glitch in the matrix. You might have even experienced a glitch in the matrix. Well, I experienced my first glitch in the matrix last night. So when I go to bed, I put my laptop and my phone in the kitchen. I don't like having any computers or anything in my bedroom when I'm sleeping. And I normally will wake up 7 a.m. every single morning And last night I kind of went to bed a little bit later. So I put my alarm on my phone, 7 a.m. And then I went into my room and went to bed and went to sleep. And it was about 7:01, and I woke up in the morning and I could hear my alarm going off in the kitchen. So I got out of bed, came into the kitchen and grabbed my phone, turned my alarm off. And I'm thinking, oh, it's 7 o'clock. I should just go back to bed for a bit because I did stay up late last night. So I went back to bed and I just changed my alarm to 7:30. I was just going to give myself permission to sleep 30 more minutes. So I put my phone just on my night table and I'm looking at my table clock. And of course it says, 7:01. And I go back to sleep. And then the next moment I wake up and I'm thinking my alarm is about to go off any moment. So I grab my phone and I go and turn my alarm off from 7:30 a.m. And I look at my table clock and it says 3 a.m. And I'm thinking, did I just dream of my alarm going off my phone? And did I just dream that I walked into my kitchen and got my phone? And I looked over on my nightstand and there was my phone. And yes, I put my phone on the night table and went back to sleep. And I've never experienced anything like that. So it was almost as if I was being given a do-over to get up at 7 a.m. in the morning. But yes, I have never had anything like that happen. So maybe you have experienced glitches in the matrix. And if you have, please email and let me know, because I think we need to be talking about this more and more as we shift timelines, right? Okay. We're just going to move into updates. Sandra has an update for all of us.
All right, so good evening, everyone. I'm Sandra Quinn. I am the host of the Communication Forum, and also I host the Social Club events, which we have one coming up on Saturday, March 18th at 4:30 Pacific, 5:30 Mountain, and et cetera, down the line. So I just wanted to share with you, it's what we're having the event this week is the Community Wealth Game. So I'm just going to share my screen and play a little video to give you an idea of what this is about. I won't play the whole video because it's about 11 minutes, but I'll play a couple pieces of it. And then when I come back from sharing, I'll just give you a little bit more information about how to join us if you'd care to come and play the game. Right, here we go.
Community Wealth, a cooperative board game. It's a 2.
Okay, well, let's go to engage.
Building community wealth starts with engaging people. In this board game, we start by heading over to the engage space to get people involved. And since we've started out with no money, we also need to encourage friends and family to invest in our community instead of Wall Street. In the game, a roll of the dice determines how much the investor agrees to invest in the Opportunity Investment Fund. This is the money our community will borrow to start our businesses instead of relying on big banks. The inspiration for this idea came from a tiny town in Alberta, Canada called Sangudo.
We had 22 members. Each one of us put in $10,000, and we raised $220,000 in a matter of 2 weeks. We worked with these guys to help them develop their business plan. As a co-op, we bought the property, the real estate, and then we worked out a really great lease agreement with these entrepreneurs. It was great for the co-op members because the more that we could tell our friends and neighbors and other people to do business with the meat shop, the better they would do, which would mean more money would come back to the co-op as well. Instead of the business people paying their interest back to the bank, which goes to the shareholders, instead the money goes back to our friends and neighbors in the community. When we
I'm just going to move the video along, just to give you an idea of the plan.
Is benefiting your community instead of big corporations. You want to read it?
Energy. Your community has installed energy-producing exercise bicycles to generate supplemental electricity while keeping residents active and healthy. Place a Stop the Leak token to indicate that your community is moving towards self-sufficient energy.
To win the Community Wealth board game, we need to stop 6 leaks: work, shopping, transportation, energy, food, and housing. We also need to repay all debts, build 4 creations, gain 10 satisfaction points, and pay it forward $12,000 so another community can begin to build their community wealth. That's 8 and 4, so we've accomplished that. We've got 4 creations. Now we just need satisfaction points.
Go there.
1, 2, 3. Satisfaction.
That's one satisfaction point.
It's your turn.
Sure. You trust me,
Yeah.
do you?
No fives, no fives.
3.
3, all right. 1, 2, 3.
We won.
Yeah. And if you could just imagine, if you continued playing the game, which we're not going to do, but if you did, you know, like all this money would start to pile up in here. The workers would have so much money they won't know what to do with it. We'll have plenty of money for creation. We don't owe any money anymore, so we've created our own internal economy. And we're making so many lovely products that our expenses are way down. And to make more businesses, and pretty soon all of our businesses are creating all the products we need for our community.
Okay, so that hopefully gives you a little bit of an idea of what to expect. So the game is going to be played virtually over Zoom. We have the creators of the game who will be hosting it. So when you sign in, we'll get an overview of how the game is played. If we're not playing, depending on how many people show up, it might be played as individuals, or we may play as teams. So if we have a lot of people that join us, we'll break into teams and play it that way. So we expect it'll take a couple hours or more to play a round of the game. So if you'd like to join us, we'll put the Zoom link. It's also on the Telegram channels. Oh, Karen has already posted it. Thank you, Karen Hanna. And the Zoom link is there. The people who are organizing the game for us, the people who created the game, had asked about registration. And normally we do our social club as just an open house and whoever shows up. But in this case, we're thinking it might be a good idea for people, if you're interested in joining us. I mean, we certainly won't turn anyone away. But if you are, if you could send me an email letting me know that you're interested in joining the play of the game. And then that can maybe help us with some pre-planning as well. So this is a little bit different than just having a watch party where we just, press play. So this will take a little bit of organization. We hope you'll join us. So big crowd tonight, a very important topic. Let's give them all our attention, try and stay on topic in the chat. And thanks for being here. With that, I yield.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And I'm really glad that we're talking about the wealth game this evening and how he mentioned about we need to invest in community instead of in the stock in the big bank. So thank you for that. I highly recommend everyone take a moment and play the game this weekend. Yeah, we'll definitely be sending out the email for that. Excellent. Okay. So we all know that the fiat currency system will be collapsing because it's like a house. There's no foundation to support it. And there's a lot of fear and worry about the economy, but we need to ask ourselves a very important question. Is our worry and fear of a collapsing system a self-fulfilling prophecy? Are we all collectively creating the collapse so that we can move into a better world based in integrity and truth, right? Once the economy collapses, maybe our soul is going to say, finally, now we can live a real life, because the economy of community, connection, and truth is really going to rise up then. And again, if you have fear wrapped around losing money, you need to feel it now. The acronym of FEAR, face everything and rise. Yes, this is my shameless plug for our Life Force Canada t-shirts. Okay, everyone, just breathe in life force energy. And as you're breathing, you're saying to yourself, I'm releasing my attachments to man-made things. I'm releasing my attachment to man-made things. We are here to experience everything. We're just not meant to be attached to it. Okay, I am not here to give you financial advice. I am not here to tell everyone in Canada to take their money out of the bank, because we know that if everyone did that, if they had attempted to withdraw their money at the same time, the system could collapse, right? The focus is on you, our members here at Life Force Canada. We want you to do what is best for you, to not do anything from a place of fear, to make smart choices because you have the necessary information that you need to make really powerful decisions, right? That's why we have Toby Neuendorf with us this evening. So before I introduce you to him, I'm just going to share a video that he recommended.
Yourself in one of these scenarios. You go shopping and your credit card transaction is denied despite the fact that you know you have money in your account. Or you go to an ATM machine and you're informed that your withdrawal request has been denied. Or you're a public official, such as a school business administrator, county treasurer, municipal finance manager, pension fund administrator, or anyone who has responsibility for protecting public taxpayer funds. You're informed that all accounts have been frozen until further notice. As you investigate why you can't access money you know should be available, you find out that the bank has failed and has been closed until further notice by the FDIC. You also discover that the government will be confiscating part of your deposits in order to stabilize the bank. You believe that this can't happen here because the FDIC protects your money. You may have placed your money into one of the big banks because it has large vaults and is protected by the government. You may have placed public monies into a large bank because they're collateralized and the government will back them. Therefore, you think these funds are safe. All of these assumptions are not based on facts. Perhaps you recall that in Cyprus, depositors' money was confiscated in order to stabilize the banks. Similar plans are already in place to do the same in the US and other countries. In a nutshell, the banks in Cyprus were over-leveraged to the point that their liabilities exceeded their gross domestic product. Because the global bailouts, large banks, 2008, were so politically unpopular, the global banking choice, the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the European Union imposed a bail-in in which bank customers would have had some of their savings seized in order to stabilize the banks. The losses to some clients were as high as 60%.
Cyprus was the test run. And that's where the European Union kind of let the cat out of the bag, what they plan to do on a bigger scale. But depositors took a real haircut. Interestingly, though, of course, the big boys got out. In the days before, they went to, after depositors' money, small time saver, $150 billion, I forget the number, left the Cyprus banks because the insiders knew what was coming. And the insiders will know what's coming when the next US bank burns down. they'll get out and they'll leave the mom and pop depositors and maybe city governments holding the bag.
In order to protect themselves, the Cyprus government closed the banks 12 days. People had limited access to their money. Long lines formed at the ATM machine.
The fact is, the confiscations in Cyprus were not a one-time event. The eventuality for this had already been planned in advance, and there are plans in place for confiscations of depositor accounts in New Zealand, the European Union, Canada, England, and the United States.
And we passed Dodd-Frank legislation. And people think, well, that's it for bailouts. No, that's not it. Actually, it's just going to be a bail-in. In order to maintain liquidity in failed banks, the European Union and the Federal Reserve have a policy of bailing in, which means you seize depositors' deposits. Those could be mom and pop up to their $250,000. It could be a city's deposits on deposit. It could be bondholders. That's what happened in Cyprus. That's what's happening right now with the Cooperative Bank in London, England. And that's what the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Bank of England have jointly agreed to do here in the United States.
The large global and Wall Street banks are the ones at most risk because they've been gambling with depositor money on risky derivative bets and other speculative investment devices, which means that when, not if, these bets start going bad, the banks will be on the hook for their deficient value. According to the Bank for International Settlements, which is essentially a central bank for the world's central banks, the notional value of these derivative contracts is an astounding $700 billion. Think 700,000 billion dollars. The entire world's GDP is only $70 trillion. There's not enough money on the planet to cover these bets. What most people don't understand is that once you give a bank your money, the money is legally no longer yours. Under the law, depositors are considered unsecured creditors to the bank and are treated as such under any bankruptcy proceeding. This type of loss happened with the collapse of MF Global. And while MF Global was a futures trading company and not a bank, the blueprint for confiscations was delivered here. The losses of customer funds were upheld by the legal system with the Sentinel case. Another important fact is this: these speculative derivatives have super priority status in a bankruptcy proceeding, which means that any derivative contract holder gets paid first, before shareholders, creditors, and depositors like you.
It could well be that local government deposits are at risk in the event of the bail-in of one of the major banks on Wall Street when they next fail. Those are unsecured deposits. Now, Wall Street likes to say they've been collateralized, but the derivatives holdings of the major banks is several times the world's gross domestic product. There isn't enough money in the world to cover major losses in that market. So if they start to go down, first, the counterparties to derivatives get covered. That's the new law. They get their money first. You'll get your money, you an individual depositor, or you a city, if there's any left. What you might get instead is equity in the bank. So instead of having $400 million to meet your city's payroll, you may have $200 million and $200 million in new stock in the bank, which you just become a shareholder. But try meeting a payroll in stock in a failed bank.
If you think that the FDIC will still come riding to the rescue, consider these facts. This chart will look at three figures: the FDIC insurance fund balance, the total deposits in U.S. banks, and the total derivatives exposure of the big banks. The FDIC has approximately $25 billion in its fund to cover losses. The total deposits in U.S. banks totals $9,283 billion. The U.S. banks' derivatives total is $297,514 billion. The FDIC could only cover 0.25% of all deposits, and the FDIC could only cover 0.008% of the derivatives.
Looking at the FDIC Bank of England joint paper summary, the text clearly says that in the U.S., it will use the powers granted under the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act. and losses will be assigned to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Remember that as a depositor in a bank, under the law, you are an unsecured creditor. Moving further on down in this document, the text clearly says that the strategy for a failed global systemically important financial institution will be to assign losses to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Going further down the same document, you will see that the text clearly says that a resolution strategy for a failed globally systemically important financial institution will be to assign the losses to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Remember that you are now looking at an official government document and the plans for confiscation.
If you're a public official with fiduciary responsibility to protect public monies, this news is critically important with far-reaching implications about what your responsibility demands. If you can't deposit public monies into the large Wall Street banks without being at proven risk of losing access to it to confiscation under existing law, what options are there? Well, one option would be to create a public bank for your municipality, like North Dakota did 94 years ago. Their public bank was completely unaffected by the Wall Street bank collapses, financial trials back in 2008, and in fact, boasted one of their largest profits ever while mighty global financial institutions fell. The Bank of North Dakota, which treats its public funds as a utility rather than a speculative fund to gamble for profits, has a simple purpose: to preserve and protect its assets while investing in local priorities instead of non-local international corporations. It is completely independent of global banker greed and risky behaviors. Its money cannot be confiscated.
We're making the argument that the biggest banks on Wall Street really aren't safe, that they've got so much exposure in derivatives and who knows what else. They're in danger of going down and taking depositors with them. We think money is much safer closer to home. It's also more productively used. All the money Philadelphia has on deposit, let's say Wells Fargo, that money's not being put to work in Philadelphia. Let's put the money locally where it can be put to use in Philadelphia.
Public officials need to be clear about this risk. While the prospect of fund confiscation sounds startling, it is nonetheless true that the risk is not only there, it is promised to take place if such bank failures occur once again. And you're probably aware that such failures are expected by many, if not most, financial observers. This is your moment, a time to step up to the plate, look around at the environment and the financial players pitted against you, and to act prudently in the interests of your community. The era of blind trust in the institutions of global finance is over. Public fiscal officers and citizens alike would be well served to learn more about how to create the local public bank and what it might look like to have a new financial engine that provides for community growth, funds security, and increased local investment. There is now an urgent choice to be made at every municipal level. Either leave your public money in the hands of proven gamblers with the promise that it will be confiscated when more bad deals go down, or take a bold, innovative step to empower and safeguard community funds by adopting the proven public bank alternative.
So consider yourself warned. Money is not safe in the big banks. The MF Global losses, the Cyprus confiscations, legal precedents of the Sentinel case, the FDIC Bank of England joint paper, plan for confiscations in Canada, New Zealand, and the European Union should all be sending red flags. Personal accounts, municipal money, county money, university money deposited in the big banks is all at risk. The plans for confiscation have been developed. They have been approved, and they are awaiting the next crisis.
Okay, Toby Neuendorf has been a CMA since 1992, and he is also a member of LifeFirst Canada. Toby reached out to me a few weeks ago and shared with me that he's been researching what's really going on in the world for the last 12 years and wanted to share his insights with us regarding our financial system and then potential solutions. So welcome, Toby.
Well, if you haven't seen the Big Short movie, the true story of the 2008 planned and very expertly executed collapse of the they called it the subprime mortgage crisis, but it was staggering. I mean, I had heard about this movie quite a while ago and here and there, but I never got around to seeing it. And then I was just going through a whole bunch of boxes of DVDs that I bought from a friend that I had never looked through, and there it was. So I thought, oh, right on. So I was about a little over a month ago, I watched this movie, and I just I was just speechless. I was in kind of a daze for days after that. Basically, what this movie showed in a really it's a really entertaining way. It's really valuable to discuss what happened in 2008 in light of what's happening right now here, and in light of what you just listened to there. So the bank, some guy at I think it was Morgan Stanley, came up with this idea. I don't know when this was, in the early 2000s. He said, well, why don't we bundle a whole pile, like maybe 1,000 mortgages together, and like wrap them up, put a bow on them, and call them a mortgage-backed security. And so they said, well, who doesn't make their mortgage payments, right? So these are very secure, but as a mortgage, they're just like boring investments. But if you bundle a bunch of them together, and the bank sells them to an investor like a pension fund, the bank can sell them at a profit, and the pension fund has a rock solid investment that will be, will basically be guaranteed to make whatever percent returns those mortgages average out. So those things, they just sold like hotcakes, and in a little while, the banks ran out of mortgages to bundle up, and so they thought to themselves, "Shit, we need more mortgages," because they were making a pile of money from this, and plus they got all these mortgages off their books too, so they didn't even have to worry about these, chasing these people down if they stopped paying. So they got this bright idea. Well, let's lower the requirements for mortgages. So they lowered them, and people started qualifying for mortgages that wouldn't normally have qualified for them. And then these mortgages started, trickling in again. But they said, no, this is not enough. We need more. We need more. Our customers are all screaming for these mortgage-backed bonds. So in about early 2007, the banks were writing mortgages to people with no income, no job. They called them ninja loans: no job, no income, no assets. As long as you could sign on the mortgage document, they would give the mortgage. So there were strippers in Las Vegas that are shown on this movie that each one had 5 houses and 2 mortgages on each house, like on the same house. They had 2 mortgages on the same house. So, and the reason they did this, they bribed the federal government into giving these mortgages, like they were variable rate mortgages. So when the interest rate fluctuates, the interest rate on these mortgages would fluctuate, but they wouldn't fluctuate for the first, I don't know what it was, 18 months or so. So the interest rates on these mortgages were very low. So these exotic dancers, they were, well, big deal. They were making the mortgage payments just with their tips that they were getting off their dancing. But the banks now had whole piles of these new mortgages that they could bundle up and sell as mortgage-backed securities to their hungry pension fund. And these big investors just loved these bonds. Anyway, so this doctor finds out about this. This doctor who for some reason he had a big, maybe he got a big inheritance or whatever. So he was running this. He quit his medical practice, and he was just investing money, his money and other people's money. And somehow he came across this idea that these mortgages, these bonds were full of mortgages that would all explode as soon as this federal government guarantee program ended. He went into a big Morgan Stanley, I think it was, and he was good friends with the executives. So he said to them, "I want to short the housing market." And they said, "What, are you nuts?" And he said, "No, I want to short the housing market, but there's no vehicle to do that right now. I want you to create an investment and I'll buy it, guaranteed." So, and they said, "What, maybe $20 million?" No, he said, I'll guarantee 200 million, the first one. And they said, "You're nuts. We're gonna charge you a premium every year for this, and housing prices are going to keep going up, and every year you're just going to have an investment that won't give you any return." He said, "I know, it's okay." So they came up with this thing called a interest rate swap. So this guy did the same thing at several different banks, bought something like over $1 billion worth of these interest rate swaps. So anyway, I won't go into the details, but when another guy found through a wrong number. Anyway, this one guy decided he wanted to look into this. So he had a friend that was high up in the S&P rating agency that gives, say, AAA, 92% AAA ratings on an investment so that the investors know how secure the investment is, right? So he goes in to this lady's office and basically starts talking to her, and he says, "How can you give the AAA rating to this bond? Have you ever looked at the mortgages that are in this bond?" And she said, "No, nobody ever looks at them." Well, he said, "How can you give it a AAA rating when you don't know? Nobody's ever looked at. You haven't even looked at it. What's in these bonds?" So she says, "Well, if we don't give it a AAA 92% rating, they'll just go down the street to just skips my mind now. The other one of the other rating agencies, and they'll give them the rating." So what they were doing, these rating agencies who are supposed to be like the CDC is supposed to be in the health, in the vaccine and the health field, and the FDA are supposed to be, they were being paid, like they were auctioning off basically to the big banks these high ratings that they were giving to these shit bonds. And nobody knew about it except these few guys, this doctor and these couple of young guys figured it out. Anyway, so when these banks started going down, it was because these mortgages were in their bonds were just, the people didn't have jobs, so they weren't making their mortgage payments, obviously. The banks had unloaded these crappy mortgages onto these unwitting investors, right? Because Moody's had given them a AAA 92% rating. But this is how criminal they are. They were giving people mortgages that didn't have any jobs, and they were selling those as if they were, ultimate investments to these unsuspecting pension funds who were investing your mom and dad's pension money into these crappy investments. So when this blew up, it was very close, like it was within hours of taking down the entire global banking system. And so they went and demanded a $700 billion initial bailout from the federal government. And of course they owned the federal government. So it was just a, formality. They had to make it look like it was a big deal that, the government came to our rescue. It was all planned. And in the years since 2008, those same banks have been bailed out a total of $26 trillion because of that fiasco in 2008 that they caused, and knowingly. Not one person went to prison for it, for all of those crimes. Mm-hmm. People lost billions of dollars. I just saw the other, I think it was it was some staggering amount. It was like in the low trillions of dollars that just vanished, disappeared. But the banks had their money. Anyway, so since 2008, nothing was changed. The rating agencies are still all corrupt, manned by these corrupt people. But now the derivatives market, which this guy was talking about, when you watch this thing later, you'll see the chart that he put up there. The derivative market now that's starting to unravel, that's causing these bank failures, is hundreds of times the size of the mortgage-backed securities market that almost took out the entire global banking system in 2008. Hundreds of times larger. They're not quite as risky, but they're not leveraged 100 to 1, but they're leveraged like 30 to 1 or something. So when they just start going sideways, they'll just wipe out. That's what we're dealing with here now. And this is the start of it. It started in Nigeria about a month ago, and the Nigerian banks are melting down, and they tried introducing the CBDB, central bank digital currency. Anyway, it's just an absolute chaos in Nigeria, and then it very soon moved into Turkey's banks, because Turkey's banks are very tied to Nigeria, and Turkey's banks started melting down. But 2 days after they started, before anybody really was talking about it, they conveniently had these big earthquakes, which everybody, that's what all everybody talked about on the news. And then contagion was going to spread to Germany, because Germany has a huge Turkish community, and the German and Turkish banks are very interlocked. And so it was supposed to take several more months before it showed up here in U.S. But the banking system is so interconnected that it's like those you see on Police Academy 3 or whatever 4, where where they have these row of steel balls on strings, and you pick up the end one and you drop it against it smashes against this end, and the other end flies off, the other one on the other end. That's how the banks are. It's like a great big mesh. So, and it's derivatives that's causing this. And so this bail-in is a huge deal. We don't need to get into the big, like my fear of why they introduced this bail-in. If you were interested in that, you can read the document that we will put up after. Karen will put up on somewhere where you can access it. But so what to do about this? I love that community investment game that you mentioned there earlier, because we've all been talking about passionately for 10 years about community. But how do you finance? We need to attract fiat currency to these community projects in order to buy the land and develop the infrastructure. So, I've got a small, very small group, maybe handful of people who are really keenly interested in community, and extremely intelligent, extremely talented. Some of the people on this call probably know Carlton Gruger, probably one of the smartest mycologists in the world. And he's a plasma physicist, and he's only 30 years old, absolute brilliant guy. He's got this wild mind, almost like a Tesla mind. And he's got this vision of a community with a 110-foot tall pyramid in the center, with coated with white quartz, and the basement and in the basement level, I think it was growing strawberry, and this would be a large base of, I don't know, 110 feet tall, probably like a, 50-foot square base. The basement level, I think, would be growing mushrooms. The main floor level would be growing strawberries or something that are symbiotic with mushrooms. And then the next two floors would be storing seeds. And the inside of the peak of the pyramid would be a healing center.
Mhm.
And then the community homes would be little domes probably around the base of the pyramid or somewhere where it would be not so intense. I'm sure inside the pyramid, the energy would be too intense to live there. But anyway, these are staggeringly good ideas. And another friend, Shane, in Leduc, he's got Blackfeet Health Products.
Oh, yes.
He's a hey.
You know Shane? Yes. He's
Yeah,
amazing.
he's brilliant. And he also, I was on a call with him recently. He and Carlton are good friends. He was talking, he has run and managed a large biodiesel generating facility that can take biomass, like specifically hemp fiber or other things like that, and convert it into a whole bunch of products. And the ending byproduct would be enough electricity to run 10,000 homes. But they would have all kinds of other products
That's the
that come out as byproducts of it. But it needs to have some way of attracting capital initially, right? So this afternoon, actually, after I was emailing with you, Karen, I emailed you and I said maybe some of your members in this call will know some good credit unions. So I thought, well, I'm going to give some credit unions a call. So actually, I spoke to 3 CEOs of credit unions, one in Saskatchewan, and one in Edmonton is called the Christian Credit Union. And then the guy, I was talking to him for about 3/4 of an hour, really, really cool guy, very smart. And then a couple of times I was talking like I usually talk. And he said, well, you should talk to Bow Valley Credit Union. He said they think very much like you think. So I got off the phone with him and I looked up Bow Valley Credit Union, and lo and behold, the CEO, the president, is right there on the main menu. So I thought, oh, cool. So I clicked on dialed his number, and boom, there he was. And I talked to him for exactly an hour. Brilliant guy too. And he just 6 weeks ago introduced a thing that's called gold backed. He basically already said that he wants me on the board, and I believe that we can very easily, especially now with this crisis, everybody's talking about this. I'm going to make a proposal to him in the next day or two to bring a whole pile of silver into Bow Valley Credit Union as an asset base to back loans.
Beautiful.
And then I'm going to, as a sideline of that, one of the reasons for this project will be to fund, to stake projects like Carlton's vision or this big Shane's project, like the biofuel project, and other similar cutting edge technologies. Like there's all kinds of these Tesla technologies that are coming out of the woodwork now. And before the internet is, basically locked, which could happen any time. Right now, it's still wide open. So I'm going to propose that we set up basically a library initially for scouring the internet for all the best technologies and just asking anybody who has any good ideas to present them, and we'll invite people from around the world, anybody that wants to move money out of the big banks to buy silver and invest it in this bank, in this credit union, and they'll, instead of the silver just sitting there, like that's why a lot of investors don't like owning precious metals, is because it doesn't generate an income. This silver will generate an income for these investors based on the market value of the silver and based on the income that silver generates with producing loans, providing loans. I should shut up for a minute, see if anybody has any reaction to any of this stuff so far.
We are just so grateful that you are here, Toby. And I love that you've connected with Shane and it's actually the Earth Power Lodge. We interviewed Grant who out of Calgary here, who was wanting to build the Earth Power Lodge and manifest the money for it to happen. But yeah, it's such a brilliant idea, and I think every town needs to have one of those.
Especially in southwestern Alberta, like north and west of Calgary, there's thousands of abandoned oil wells with hot water in them, like thousands, tens of thousands. Can you imagine if you had property with hot water, unlimited, basically hot water heated by the earth, that you could pump up, and you didn't even have to dig a hole or nothing. It's there already, and use it to generate electricity, heat greenhouses, whatever. And we're going to need resilient ways of generating heat and electricity as we go into this crazy climate that's coming. And it's not because of cow farts or this bullshit that there's this brilliant guy, Raymond Wheeler. I'm not sure when he wrote this. It was in the 1900s. And the whole book, he shows how all economic cycles are directly correlated with climate cycles, which come from, not from cow farts, but they come from the sun, which is affected by other forces, electromagnetic forces in the universe. Very interesting. But we don't need to get into that. If anybody's interested, you can email me. I've got piles of information on this.
It's all good. So for those of you who have questions for Toby, please raise your hand. I have one member she couldn't be on the call today, but she wanted to know about the CDIC, the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation, that insures your money. She wanted to know, if that's a real thing and what they do cover and what they do not cover. Well,
that's a really good question. Like in that short video about bail-ins, he talks about the FDIC, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So the Canadian one is very similar. And the big banks are guaranteed, I don't know, I think it's up to $100,000 per account. That's another thing that I didn't realize about credit unions. Credit unions in each province are backed by the provincial government, unlimited deposits. So it's not capped like the CDIC and the FDIC would be. The big thing that came out in that short video there was that even though the FDIC, everybody says, oh yeah, the FDIC or the CDIC will guarantee up to $250,000 in the States, and I think it's $100,000 in Canada, but they only have a fund to work with, a given fund. In the U.S., the video, like when it was made, I think they said 25 billion. I just read today that it was that the current pot that the FDIC has is 100 billion, but they've basically spent that today on bailing out these three banks. So they have no more money left. So now the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and it has no reserves, it's a private bank. They've already said they're just going to keep printing new money, lending the government new money to bail out any banks that are, that fail as a result of this same cause that caused these other three banks to fail already. So, but credit unions, talking to these three CEOs today, I was very relieved to hear that they are not in nearly, they're governed by provincial charters. Before I talked to these guys today, I thought the ATB Financial, Alberta Treasury Branches, was the only publicly owned bank in Canada. It is the only publicly owned bank in Canada. So when you're watching that video again later, when he talks about the North Dakota State Bank that was founded by Quakers in about 95 years ago, ATB Financial is just the same as that bank. It's completely, it has a very strict charter. It's not allowed to speculate at all with depositors' deposits. And so talking to these credit unions, they don't speculate with depositors' deposits either. So money is going to be way safer in these credit unions to start with. And then there's no cap. The Alberta government backs them fully. Every account is fully insured. So that's a good question, though. And you mentioned in an email this afternoon about the fractional reserve system, lending system. That's one of the big criminal elements to how the Federal Reserve creates money out of nothing, out of thin air. To me, like, the question was whether if we withdraw money from the banks, whether we are causing the banks to fail. No, we're not. What we are doing is we're voting with our dollars, like we do when we buy Nikes, so that they hire more children slaves to build their runners, their gym shoes, and wherever they build them. Or if we buy more electric cars, they hire they employ these 8-year-old kids in these lithium mines.
Right.
It's just sickening when you look at all that stuff. So we vote with our dollars. If we talk to people and move money, which belongs to the two worst banks in Canada, there are 5 of them are all bad, very bad. The 2 worst ones are Scotiabank, which is directly owned by Rothschilds, and TD, which is very much owned by Rothschild's banking empire directly. But the other 3 are just as bad. They will fail unless they're bailed out to the trillions and trillions, like it's looking like it's going to start happening in the States already today. Moving money out, and I'm talking RSPs, everything. They don't consider you and me. We're a waste of skin and we're a waste of air that we breathe to them. They won't say, oh, well, the RSPs, those are for the retirement. No. If they do a bail-in, they'll take RSPs, the tax deferred, whatever their savings accounts, everything, it will be gone. So, but having a large credit union like the Bow Valley Credit Union in Alberta already would be a really cool option.
Thank you, Toby. We've got Teresa. I know you had a question. You had your hand raised.
So credit unions, are financially backed governed by financial charters per the province that they reside in, correct? Is that correct?
Right. That's what I learned today. Yes. There's a couple that are federally regulated, but very few. They're almost all provincially incorporated.
Brett is actually here. Hello, Brett.
Brett, is he on the call, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, cool. He's the CEO of Bow Valley Credit Union.
Yeah.
Hey, Toby. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I can weigh onto that. Yeah, so each province is individually regulated. I don't know what it is in other provinces, but in Alberta, yeah, all the credit unions in Alberta are provincially regulated. And Toby is correct.
Safe? Are they safe? Are they safe with our money?
Well, here's the thing. I agree with Toby's paper, everything in it, with the exception of the ATB part. They're too close to the government, and I think their actions through the Freedom Convoy and the trucker convoy speak volumes to that. And they didn't realize that they were actually OSFI regulated, which is the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. And they quickly realized that during the trucker convoy and were told and instructed to freeze people's accounts. So I think you're better off inherently with credit unions in general, just because they don't get over their skis with exactly what Toby's talking about with all these derivatives. Generally what happens, exactly like in the video, we're community-based. Our deposits fund our loans. So inherently, we can't get over our skis with all these derivatives and all this nonsense like they do with the big banks. So I sorry to sort of jump in here. I didn't mean to take things over, but
Oh, that's
anyway,
awesome that you're here.
Yes, we're
Great.
I mean, really surprised that you showed up on the call. That's fantastic.
Go ahead, Teresa.
So I'm with Service Credit Union. Just recently, I gave up on the Mainstream Bank. So the question I need to ask them is, are they regulated by the province? Is that right, Brett?
so Service Credit Union, yes, is regulated by the province, but
And so that means they're safe.
well, they're probably safer. So what happens? The good news about Alberta is we're in a big surplus. Is the thing with Alberta. In any other province in Canada, you're looking at lending money from getting bonds and treasuries or the Bank of Canada to basically fund things. So if something happened in Alberta, we have the ability to pay for it. But unfortunately, in other provinces, they don't. So the real problem with a lot of this is especially down in the States, exactly like Toby, you mentioned there, they're out of money with the insurance companies that are going to back these deposits. So what they'll do is basically just print the currency. And so inflation gets worse, things continue as they are, groceries get more expensive, housing gets more expensive, people get poorer, and it's a vicious cycle that they have to stop spending. They have to start living within their means.
Okay. Thank you
And they
so
never
much.
will.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Teresa. Great questions. Jacqueline.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a few questions actually, and it's really funny because I was speaking with some friends on the weekend, and a number of us were thinking about checking out Bow Valley Credit Union. I was actually going to go in the next couple of days. I was just
Cool.
wondering if people open up an account with the credit union like Bow Valley, can we expect to be free from the central bank digital currency? Like, are you going to be out of that, or what's happening with that?
You sort of have to understand money to some degree to understand what a central bank digital currency is. So currently, your deposits at any organization are a liability of that organization, and they're an asset on your balance sheet. With the central bank digital currency, basically what you're doing is eliminating the commercial bank or all the ETBs of the world, the Bow Valley Credit Unions of the world, the RBCs. Those all disappear, and your deposits become a liability of the Central Bank of Canada. And so that can be a very big problem, because basically it gives them free reign over all your deposits. They can basically dictate what you do. They can know what you spend your money on. They can turn it off. They can turn it on. They can give you time limits of when you're allowed to spend it, when you're not allowed to spend it. So it becomes a very, very powerful tool for the central bank to basically dominate your life. So if the Bank of Canada decides that they want to go towards a central bank digital currency, the best thing we can do is probably pray that they have this commercial banks involved to act as an intermediary, and so they don't have direct access to your finances, because that is where the problem is going to be.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering if like going to a credit union could protect people from that.
We'll fight tooth and nail, because the thing is we can see the problems with it, and the good news is the big commercial banks won't like this either. They will not like a central bank digital currency that's controlled by the central bank.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. And I have another question for Brett, and also one for well, maybe for both of you. So just to clarify about our RSPs, I've been wondering about, like, is it a good idea to liquidate them then, so that people can at least control what happens to that money?
Yeah, it's hard to say depending on individual circumstances. It definitely puts the government between you and your money, because what they want is the tax on that. But I would suggest that it's probably just as safe as any other cash that's in a financial institution. Take that with a grain of salt. But
Okay, thank you. And then I was also wondering, for either Toby or Brett, like for someone with either a mortgage or I have a homeowner's line of credit, which I've run up quite a bit. And I was wondering, I'm really concerned about rising interest rates and if how I'm going to manage that. I don't know if if things go really not good, what's going to happen to people with mortgages or homeowners line of credits with, outstanding balances, and would one be safer? Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Weigh in here anytime, Toby, but in my perspective, if they wanted to reset everything, this is how they would do it, is basically through debt. And so basically your debt becomes not manageable, and then you're beholden to them, is effectively what it is. They might come up with a keen solution of like, oh, this is great, we're going to bail you out, but that's sort of the way they do things, is basically they've bailed you out and then you've just, signed a deal with the devil.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Great questions.
Karen, can I just weigh in on Jacqueline?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Jacqueline, you said you have a RRSP and you have a line of credit or mortgage or something, but do you know you can borrow money from your RRSP? You can borrow $20,000.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that.
You can go look into it and inquire about it. And there are some things you can do. If your RSP is invested in mutual funds and whatnot, you might want to go in a cash position, but put it back into a RRSP savings account at a bank. So you don't, if the stock market falls, you wouldn't suffer the loss. And the stock market is going to be very volatile this summer until after September. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, it's Stephanie. I finally figured it out.
Yay.
Sorry about that. So I live in Ontario. So my concern with this digital currency and being able to access money, even if it was in the credit unions, is we belong to 2 credit unions here. I live in Bancroft, and we just moved from Ottawa a couple of years ago. But both of our credit unions have told us that they are going digital, and that they have to follow whatever the banks do. And I mean, provincially, if they're being governed by provincial laws, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that it's really determined by who governs, like who the premier is of each province and whether they've signed on to it or not. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, I think you're probably absolutely right. Is the unfortunate truth of that is because the system's so wound up together that it's pretty difficult to step outside of it. We are looking at options to do that as well, but you are right. And so unfortunately we need the politicians' help on this one as well.
Well, that's not going to happen here. Unfortunately, he's
That's
really
very
good friends
scary.
with Chrystia Freeland. And the other question I had, if I may, are investments. So we just actually shifted our investments from EdgePoint into GICs, which haven't even shown up in my portfolio yet, which is really sending me off into a panic. But the only way to access anything through our investments is to have them deposited into our bank accounts. I guess with the banks going the way they're going, that would mean anybody with investments or pensions like my husband and I.
And it's going to get worse.
I am looking for connections to other credit unions across Canada, because this isn't just an Alberta problem. Everybody knows that. And so if anybody's sort of in contact with the local credit union, I'm happy to talk with them, because we need to be able to solve this problem nationwide.
Well, I can give you the contacts for both of ours. One's Alterna and the other is the Kawartha Heights.
Hey, Brett, can people from outside of Alberta open accounts in Bow Valley Credit Union?
Unfortunately, no. So because we're provincially regulated, we're bound to Alberta boundaries. You can either be a resident, have a corporation that has a head start.
To just buy a shelf company from a law firm and have it have an Alberta address, so they could then put capital from other banks into that corporation, which could invest it in Bow Valley Credit Union.
But how would you access the money physically?
Well, physically, our ATM network is Canada wide. So
Okay.
basically, you can go to any ATM.
I'm so glad that Brett's on this call. This is awesome.
I think every province here is represented.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely. Janine, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jean, and I'm in British Columbia, Vancouver specifically. And I have been watching YouTube regarding GESARA. I go to GESARA News on YouTube. And there it shows that the BRIC countries, Russia, India, China, and some others are backing their currency with gold, or they're getting prepared to. Is that what we want? Is my question.
And yeah, that's our intention with our credit union. We have physical precious metals in our stores that to back our members of our organization. But I also recommend that people personally acquire physical precious metals. But the thing is, don't get over your skis. Don't completely drain all your bank accounts and buy all precious metals and things like that. That's just not prudent. It's you sort of have to be careful with these things, but think of precious metals as more of an insurance policy if the world really goes to heck in a handbasket.
Well, I'm not very hip about any of this financial anything, but these are countries themselves that are doing this. These are not the individual members of countries. So what does that mean? Because Canada is not involved in that thus far. And I understand that we are a corporation under the US corporation, and the individual fiat currency holders will not have to be so concerned when our country itself does the right thing, which is back our currency with gold. Am I correct in that?
To me, that's the way the
never
world
will.
seems to be going. But well, at least in the BRIC countries. But yeah, Toby's right, because fiat currency gives them so much power to do whatever they want. They're going to go kicking and screaming to go back on a gold standard.
Like if you know anyone in Alberta, or you can create a very easily, you can call a law firm in Alberta and buy a shelf company that, you know, that's a company that they incorporated a few years ago, and just for $1,000 or whatever, $1,500 or whatever, you can buy this corporation and have the law firm or somebody else act as the address for it, the headquarters, and then that corporation can invest. They can deposit as much money as you want to put into your corporation in the Bow Valley Credit Union or in an Alberta-based institution that is not in the big fiat currency scam system. I basically got out of the financial world about 12 years ago when I realized that I was a trained monkey for the criminal banking cartel, which run the world for the Pope. Is basically because the Pope is the Crown. The Crown is a corporation in London, which is owned by the Vatican.
We have Dan here. Dan has been with LifeForce Canada for a while, and I think that most of you will recognize him. He represents a company in Alberta as well, and they sell gold and silver. And so I would love for Dan to connect with Brett and Toby. So Dan, if you just want to share a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Actually, doing a gold and silver presentation tonight for another group, so I appreciate the opportunity to step in here. I was going to put a plug in for Brett, and here he is on the call, so that's fantastic. I'll see you tomorrow, Brett. So yeah, as Karen mentioned, I work with Solid Financial Solutions. We're a financial education company that is also a gold and silver broker. We sell precious metals. And this question has come up a couple times tonight that I heard is what to do with RRSPs. We actually have a program for that as well. Physically own gold and silver in your RRSP. So if you're worried about a market crash or something like that, then it's a good alternative. It's still a government program, so it's not an ideal solution, but it's a much better solution than either collapsing your RSP and paying the tax consequence, or just leaving your hard-earned money at risk of a market crash. So happy to talk to anybody about that. Karen's got my contact info. I'm sure she can share that with the group again for anybody that missed my previous presentation for this group, but happy to answer any questions on that as well.
Thank you so much, Dan. Yes, there's quite a few of our members that bought some silver and gold here. And yes, if you want to email me and learn more from Dan, about Dan and what he does, send me an email and I'll send you his information.
Excellent, thanks.
And just before I move into the questions, Doris Reimer is here, and Doris is a lawyer and she's open to helping people set up their accounts. Doris?
Oh, hi. Yeah, thanks. I just saw some questions in the chat about setting up an Alberta corporation, and yes, I put my email in the chat. It's Doris at Reimer LLP. If you are looking to set one up, I can put my phone number in the chat as well if that's helpful. And yes, the cost is typically around $1,000 to set that up.
Thank you so much, Doris. Appreciate you. Okay, Amelia, go ahead.
So I just have a couple of remarks. One is I tried to go into credit unions and I live in BC. So I went into Coast Capital and then they turned federal. So you're moving money and then you have to move money again. There's a lot of fees and a lot of work trying to do that. So I think, I don't know if there's a possibility when we do the research that credit unions could end up becoming federal. That would be a thing to look at. And then secondly, with the purchasing of precious metals, can there be a possibility? I know it's a federally run business, but can they also confiscate, because they've done that in the past?
Both
Especially
really good
if
questions.
the paper trails and everything going into all these banks and
Bingo.
as well as, yeah.
Yes. I asked Silver Gold Bull, which is a Calgary-based company, that question. Well, it was about 8 or 9 years ago at a resources conference in Calgary. And they said it's going to be very unlikely for the governments to actually do a confiscation like they did in 1933, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But he said what they probably will do, or very likely could do, is they could go to the online metals dealers,
yes,
and ask them for their customer lists,
yes,
and transactions. So you're very, very astute to talk about the paper trail. So the best way to get silver, and I'm completely, I've been researching silver for 12 years, and it's an absolutely amazing opportunity to own physical silver. But the way I would do it is I would go to the big, there's big, in Edmonton, I'm familiar more with Alberta, but Beck's Jewelers, the big jewelry companies, they take in what they call junk silver. People, and there's a lot of companies that are advertising, sell us your gold and silver jewelry and whatever. So the Beck's Jewelers here in Edmonton has a 5-gallon pail that when somebody comes in and wants to sell, old necklaces or old currency, coins that are silver coins from before 1968 or 65, they'll give them a certain amount. I think it's very close to par, very, very close to spot price. And then they keep this pail until it gets full, and then they send the pail to their mint to have remelted. And that junk silver is actually an extremely, I believe it's going to be probably the most valuable kind of silver to own in a catastrophic economy, because let's say you take a chain, a lot of silver chains have these very, very tiny links. So you have let's say you get a very fine sterling silver chain that's 92% silver, and it's got a little 925 on the clasp. And let's say that necklace weighs, a quarter of an ounce, and let's say it has 100 links in that chain, and they're virtually identical. Each link, they're machine manufactured. So basically what you have in that chain is you have 100 little tiny pieces of a hundredth of a quarter ounce of silver each.
Mm-hmm.
If the system doesn't completely crash and completely collapse, then silver and gold, once the world wakes up like they're going to be doing right now and realizing, oh man, I better get into something solid, and there's a demand for physical precious metals, then the value of physical silver and physical gold, particularly silver, is going to just go absolutely ballistic.
It's already starting. It's already starting. It went up
well,
about $80 the last. I always tell people, if you're going to get anything, always do it in different types of denominations, silver and gold. So you have something little and something big. If you have to do trading, stuff like that.
If Brett starts this, and it explodes with a bang across the internet, it will create a trend. And like several people have said already in this call, the people have the power. It's just right now there's no way for them to organize and exert that power against these criminals. But we are the power. And the other big thing we have going for us is they are not permitted to violate our sovereign free will. Even Lucifer cannot violate our free will. So they have to trick us into complying or back us into a corner so that we have no other alternative but to voluntarily choose to do what they want us to do. They cannot force us legally to do it. Yeah, once the wake up starts, it will overpower them very easily, very fast, very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jen, go ahead. Thank you for your patience.
Me, Jen. Hey, thanks. I kind of want to ask you to summarize what it is that Bow Valley Credit Union is doing differently. Like maybe I don't get it, or could you quickly say what they're doing differently? Why it's the solution?
Basically, what we've decided that we want to do is basically sit on two sides of a fence, because you can't be able to transact in today's world with gold and silver. It just doesn't work. You can't even do it with Bitcoin or any cryptocurrencies. So we've tried to position ourselves as an intermediary where you can transact as in the fiat currency. So you can buy groceries, you can, go to the movies, you can sort of do whatever you need to do in fiat, but also have the confidence that the system won't implode around you, exactly like Toby's talking, that you'd have bail-ins or basically confiscating your currency in that piece. So it's not an ideal situation. Ideally, we'd love to completely step out of the fiat system, but it's just not practical for people to do that. So we're trying to serve as a medium between two different worlds is effectively what we're trying to do. We see as inflation as a major problem that's going to persist for the next decade or so, and it'll basically completely erode people's savings. And we're basically trying to get in front of that and protect our membership against something like that occurring. So we're basically designed to be working in combination of your personal wealth and being able to sort of transact in two different worlds is how I'd put it in a nutshell.
Sorry, we have to end the call tonight, but we are going to continue this conversation. It's a very important conversation, and I'm so glad that we had Toby here this evening. We so appreciate your knowledge and your voice here, Toby. And Brett, oh my gosh, you are a blessing to so many. Thank you for doing what you do. And we'll definitely have you both back here. We in the freedom movement, and we who are awake and aware, all the solutions are going to be shown to us as we have a curious mind, and all of us are moving out of that fear-based reality, the public domain, and moving into the knowingness that we here are going to be standing for our freedom. And thank you again, Toby, for being here, and Brett.
It's been a pleasure, and I would love to carry this conversation on a platform where we can, whoever is interested, can continue.
Absolutely, and that's one of our reasons in regards to having the Monday calls, is to making sure that everybody knows they're connected with everyone here. We're a family, and we're supporting each other across Canada.
Thank you, Karen, for what you're doing here to connect this all.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Sandra.
Thank you,
everybody.
Karen. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.